Today, we are also practicing rounding, but before you try to turn to the next video, this one, we're talking about rounding to whole numbers. Now, remember how we practiced decimals last week? We practiced ordering and comparing decimals. Well, today, we're going to practice using decimals. So, we're going to have numbers like this. Okay, we normally have on this side of the decimal, we know that these are whole numbers. So today, when we round to whole numbers, we are rounding the ones place only. When I round to the whole number, I'm going to round to the ones place. Now, same rule that we practiced yesterday. When I look at the place that I'm rounding, this is the whole number that I'm rounding, I'm going to look right next door. The number next door is going to tell me whether or not I need to round up or if I need to stay the same, okay? Now we're gonna practice with our little flip chart here first so that we get the hang of it before we do our anchor chart, okay? Now, I have 21. This is my whole. Remember, no matter how many numbers I have here, I could even have hundreds. What matters the most is that whenever we're rounding to the nearest whole, we round the ones place. It doesn't matter how many I have over here. I'm going to round the ones place, okay? Now look right next door, the rule we learned yesterday. If it's 5 or more, we raise the score. That means I would round up in my ones place. But if it's 4 or less, I give it a rest, which means that it stays the same. Now today, when we round with decimals, when it stays the same, our decimals go bye-bye. So that's the difference in our step. That's the difference in our step today. After we round and we decide whether it goes up or if it stays the same, we get rid of our decimals. Okay, so let's practice. Here, I know I'm rounding in the ones place. I'm rounding to the nearest whole. Look right next door. What do you see? What does it say? Who can read it? 4/10, right? Okay, so does this tell me that I'm going to raise the score or am I going to give it a rest? I'm going to give it a rest because it's 4 or less. That means my number stays the same. My nearest is just 621. It stays the same. And my decimals go bye-bye. But let's say I have 9/10. Now I have 5 or more, so I need to raise the score. So my ones place is going to go up. And my decimals go bye-bye. So now my number is 622. Okay, getting the hang of it? Let's look at our anchor chart. Okay, now I use a number line here just to help you see it. Okay, now I have 15 to 16. And I put the decimals in between. I have 15.1, 15.2, 15.3, 15.4. Now all of these numbers are closer to 15. And I also know that they're 4 or less. 0.4, 0.3, 0.2, 0.1. So all of those are closer to 15. So I would definitely give it a rest, right? Example, if I have 15.3, I would give it a rest. It would stay the same at 15 because I have 4 or less when I go next door, okay? Now, I rounded to the nearest whole. My nearest whole was 15. The ones place stays the same because when I look next door, I saw it was 4 or less. Now let's look over here. Now I have 15.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9. Now these numbers are closer to 16 than 15. But I also know that 5 or more, I raise the score. So I know that I would round up. Okay, and I would round up to 16. For example, if I have 15.6, my whole number, I see 5 is in my ones place, okay? That's the number I'm going to round up. I look next door and I see 6. That's more than 5, so I know I need to round up. It's 5 or more, so I raise the score. And so I round to the nearest whole, and that gives me 16. I round up in my ones place. Now, we know 15.5. No matter what, even though it's in the middle, 5 or more, we raise the score. All right, friends, now let's do some practice down here. Oh, my secret word is peaches. Yes, the fruit, peaches. I actually love peaches, okay? They're super sweet. Okay, really quick before we do our practice, I just want to remind you of the steps. When rounding to the nearest whole, we're rounding the ones place. Remember that, rounding the ones place. Number one, we look at the digit we're rounding, which is the ones place. That's the nearest whole. Okay, then we look right next door, just like here. My number is 6.42. Looks next door, I see it's 4 or less. So I know I'm definitely going to give it a rest. And so I'm going to round to 6. I give it a rest and I drop my decimals. Okay, now let's practice. 0.98 or 98 hundredths. Okay, now I know I'm going to round my ones place. Let me look at my tenths. I see that it's 9. Already I know that the 9 is more than 5. 5 or more, I raise the score. So I know that this is going to round up to what? Let's see. Is 0.98 closer to 0 for it to stay the same? Or is it closer to 1 whole? Yes, 1 whole. So I know by looking at this digit and I know by looking at my number line that 0.98 is going to round up to 1. Okay, now let's look at this one. Is it 4 or less or 5 or more? It's 4 or less. So I know I give it a rest. I can also look at my number line. Is 5.3 closer to 5 or is it closer to 6? We know it's definitely closer to 5. So here's me rounding to the nearest whole. I drop my decimals. Okay, let's look at this one. 1.07, or I can say it as 1 7 hundredths, because this is my hundredths place. Okay, now this is my whole. I identify the digit I'm rounding. Now I look right next door. I see 0. I know that's definitely less than 4. So I know I'm going to give it a rest. I also know if I look at my number line, 1.0, that's definitely going to be in here. So is that closer to 1 or 2? Definitely 1. So I give it a rest and drop my decimals. Okay, next one. Ooh, I see money. Say money, money, money. Here it says $8.75. Okay, now I know I'm rounding to my nearest whole, which is going to be my ones place. If I look right next door, I see that it's definitely 5 or more. So I need to raise the score. I can also look at my number line here. I see 8.7 is in here somewhere. So is that closer to 8 or is it closer to 9? Yep, so I know when I round to the nearest whole, my number is 9. 2 more, friends. You are shining bright like a star. All right, now, this is a bigger number, but remember what Ms. Horton said in the beginning. It doesn't matter how many units we have, whether it's thousands, hundreds, tens, or ones. When we're rounding to the nearest whole, we round the ones, okay? So I know my ones place here. This is what I'm going to round up to. Look right next door. Is this 5 or more or 4 or less? 5 or more, so I raise the score. I can also look at here. 502. Oh, I see my decimal right here. Is this closer to 502? Or is 502.80 closer to 503? Here, closer to 503. So I know I'm raising the score for sure. Rounding up to the nearest whole. Go up 1, I see that's 3. Okay, last one. 43.45 or 43 45 hundredths. Okay, now let's just use our number line this time. Why not? Let me find 43.4. Okay, I see that. So that's going to be here. Is this closer to 43 or is this closer to 44? It's definitely closer to 43. Or also, I know I could look next door and I see that this is 4 or less, so I give it a rest. It's going to be 43. Wow. Well, that was easy, right? Okay, make sure you look back at your steps or at this anchor chart. Feel free to take a picture on your computer or your phone. That way when you do your exit ticket, you can get it right. I believe in you. Make me proud. See you tomorrow.